Now that we've had a chance to talk about NURBS surfaces and draw some simple NURBS curves, we can make our first custom NURBS surface. One way to do that in Maya is to draw a curve and then to use the Revolve tool. The Revolve tool is great for making anything cylindrical. Let's give that a try. I'm going to go to the side view. It'll be easier to draw the curve we need. And I'm also going to turn on Snap to Grid, which will make snapping the vertices of the curve nice and neat. So what should we build? Well, anything cylindrical is fair game. So let's try building a glass, like a glass of water, or at least a glass that holds the water. So we're going to start by going to our CV Curve tool, Create CV Curve tool. Click on that. That puts the mouse in that special X mode. Now I can just click, and the idea with the Revolve tool is you need to create a curve that represents a cross section, or at least one half of a cross section of that cylindrical object. Let's give that a try. Now since I've snapped the grid on, it's going to snap to the grid lines. But I'm going to start right here at the origin of the side view. Click right here. And then I'm going to click one over to the left, and then space out a few more vertices. This is going to wind up being the very bottom of the glass. Now I'm going to make a turn to go up the side of the glass. So I'm going to click twice close together. So here, here, and here gives me a nice little beveled corner. Then I'll go up the side of the glass. Then I want to make a turn to make the very top bevel. So I'll click basically 4 times close together. Click, 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 click to get that nice little upside down U. Then I'll go down the center of the glass, in other words, the inside surface of the glass. And then I'll make a turn and draw the inside bottom, in other words, where the water would sit if there's water in the glass. Then once the curve is finished, I can hit the Enter key to freeze that. And there's my cross section. Now it's a 1/2 of a cross section, because you can imagine I could actually draw over here on this side to finish the glass. It's almost as if you sawed the glass in half, but you only have 1/2 of that cross section. The part that's in between the lines of the curve, like between here and here, that's a solid part of the glass. Or between here and here, again, solid glass. So now we have this cross section, we can apply the Revolve tool. So first thing we need to do is make sure we're on our Surfaces main menu, which I am right here. Then we can go to Surfaces. And the first tool under Surfaces is Revolve. Now we can apply this with the default settings first. Or we can check the options. Let's go check the options. And I'm going to reset this tool to default settings just to make sure. I'll talk about a couple of these options before we apply it the first time. One is the axis preset. That determines what axis the curve is spun around. In this case, Y makes sense because we're making a glass. If you imagine that this is a vertical ground plane running this way, and here's our Y axis. So it makes sense to spin this curve around that axis. So Y is good, and that's what you'll use most of the time. Another option is a sweep. Start and end sweep angle determines if it makes a complete circle or a partial circle. It defaults to 0 to 360, which we want for a full glass, but you can make this a shorter number, like 0 to 180, if you want like a half a glass. And then we have number of segments. I want to leave this at a low number for now, 8 segments. That's the number of radial divisions you have as you spin that curve. I'll leave it low to start with, and then we'll raise it later so you can see what the difference is. And of course, we want to make output geometry set to NURBS, because we're talking about NURBS now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Revolve. And there's our glass. I'll return to the perspective view so we can see it better. And here it is. I'll turn on shading. And there's the glass. Now the curve is still there, you just can't see it because it's directly on the surface. Or it rests exactly on the surface of this NURBS surface. Now this is a NURBS surface, it's a totally separate object. So the curve and the object are separate. Let's go find a curve. I'm going to go back to the side view. And one trick for finding that original curve is to go up here to the selection types for select by object type and deactivate everything but the curves. So turn off everything, including turning off surfaces, and just leave curves activated here. Now when I click drag a box in my view panel, I'm only allowed to select curves, so the curve will become selected, and in fact turns green. Now the NURBS surface itself turns this purplish pinkish color. That actually means that there's a relationship between that original curve and the surface. There's what's called construction history. Even though there are two separate objects, a curve and a NURBS surface, they're linked in terms of one drives the other. In this case, the curve drives that surface. In fact, what you can do is manipulate the curve and it'll automatically change the NURBS surface. Let me turn off the grid so you can see this better. So if I have the curve selected, which it is right now, and go to the Scale tool, I can scale that curve, and the NURBS surface automatically reacts. So let's go to the perspective view. So now that I've scaled that curve in the Y direction, I made a tall glass. I can scale it back and make a short glass. I'm not actually scaling the NURBS surface, I'm only scaling the curve. The NURBS surface knows it's based on the curve and automatically responds. You can scale in any direction or do any kind of manipulation you want to that curve, including picking the vertices on the curve and moving them around. If I go to Select by Component Type up here, while that curve is selected, the vertices will be visible. Then I can select a vertice if I want to, move that vertice. I'm going to turn off Snap to Grid, but move that vertice or vertex, and the surface will update automatically. So now I've made myself a vase as opposed to just a glass. And I'll move this one down here at the bottom too. We go back to the side view. You'll see that my curves change shape, and that's what my NURBS surface has. Again, that's construction history. Now we'll talk more about construction history in a later video, but just for now, if the curve's there, you can continue to manipulate it. Now you can freeze the geometry by selecting the curve as an object and deleting it. So I go back up to Select by Object Type, and if that curve is green, I can delete it. And once it's green, the NURBS surface has no more construction history on it because the curve is no longer around. Now, the NURBS surface is an object, so I'm free to apply any transform tools I want to it. So if I select it as a surface, better turn on my surface button up here. I select it as a surface, I'm free to move it, rotate it, scale it, or apply modeling tools, some of which we'll talk about here in future videos. In other words, a separate object, you can do with it what you want now. It will also have its own node up in the outliner or the hypergraph. If I go to the outliner, there's my new NURBS surface called Revolve Surface. So let's try one more revolve. Now I mentioned segments has an effect. And again, segments determines the number of radial divisions. So imagine that these vertical patches, if you were to count those, there'd be 8 of them in this case. Now, the number of radial divisions you have will affect how curvy the NURBS surface is once you render it. So let's delete this one and make another one. We'll give that a try. So I'll go back to the side view. I'm going to turn on Snap to Grid again. I'll turn on my grid so you can see it. And I'll go back to my CV Curve tool. Now we'll draw another curve that represents a cross section. And you can make a glass, a vase, anything you want to, really. Get a more intricate shape here. The idea with this is, though, you always kind of start and end the same place, and using the y-axis is a perfect place for that. Now, if you draw your curve someplace else, like far away from the y-axis, you'll have a gap. As it revolves, there'll be a gap at the top and bottom. By starting at the origin here and then ending along the same axis, you get a nice, clean bottom and top. Because I am ending the curve here, it won't be the hole at the top like with the glass. It'll be sealed up. So now we have the curve. Let's try revolve again. So back to surfaces. Revolve, I'm going to look at the option one more time. So this time we're going to increase the segments to a higher number. Let's try 48 segments. And let's try a partial sweep too, just so we can see what it looks like. Let's try 270 degrees. So 270 degrees for end sweep angle and 48 segments, and then we'll revolve. Already you can see that I have a higher density of radial divisions. There's lots of vertical lines in this case. Let's go to the perspective view and we'll see what it looks like. So the fact I pick 270 degrees for my sweep means I really get 3/4 of this revolved surface, 270 degrees. If I did 180 degrees, it'd be 1/2, and so on. But you can see that it's nice and smooth, the shape that I've created, because I have so many divisions. And since I picked a really intricate curve, I get some nice undulations on this revolved surface. And because I ended the curve along the axis, the very tip here is sealed. In other words, there's not a hole here at the top. So in any case, you can have a lot of fun with the revolved surface.